everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Justice. I'm Suzette Speaks, your host, and this is a show where we discuss legal issues and trends that affect everyday people. Today with me, I have a very special guest. He's an attorney from Broward County, Florida, and he's the principal at the McLawrence Law Firm. His name is Mr. Jara McLawrence, and we're going to discuss a little bit about how we can diversify our judges, our prosecutors, and our criminal defense attorneys. Welcome to Let's Talk Justice.
Well, thank you for having me, Suzette.
I'm grateful that you're here, and we have so much to talk about. But first, I want folks to get to know you. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, Suzette, I come from a small country in the center of the Caribbean called Dominica. I immigrated to New York when I was about 7 years old. And at 17, I joined the United States Navy. I was there for 4 years and a half. And then I went to college at Florida A&M University on the highest of seven hills, the capital city of Tallahassee, Florida.
Throw that in there, yeah.
Go Rattlers. And then I went to law school at University of Florida. And around 2001, I came down here to South Florida and started working at a construction litigation law firm.
So I know you have so much experience now, but I want to first talk about the beginning of your journey. What made you want to become a lawyer?
Well, yeah, that's interesting because I, in fact, never wanted to be a lawyer. That was never a plan that I made.
Really?
When I went to FAM, I was an accounting major, and everything was going fine until I had a racial profiling incident on the turnpike on my way back to FAM one night.
Okay, so you were a college student at the time?
I was a college student.
Will you be comfortable sharing a little bit more about what actually happened to you?
Sure. So believe it or not, back in college, I had locks. And this was, I had a very nice car at the time. I was driving a red Mustang. It was one of these with the top that could come off or come on. Convertible, I guess is the word. So I was driving this convertible Mustang. I'm on the turnpike. It's late at night. I remember it being like around February, and around that time, as you know, in Florida, it's cold. So I'm driving back to school, and I see this white car in the lane next to me, the lane to my left, and it passes me. And it didn't catch my attention until I saw the brake lights just light up, like the person smashed on their brakes so hard. And I kept driving, the person pulled up behind me, and then all of a sudden, siren and lights go off, and it was a police officer pulling me over. And he gets out of his vehicle. He tells me he pulled me over because I was doing 80 something. The speed limit on the turnpike is 70. And I told him, that's impossible. I have my cruise control set at 74 or something like that, not too much above the speed limit.
Right.
And things kind of went downhill from there.
So I can imagine what you were feeling and what you were thinking. You were a young man at the time, college student. Police officer comes in front of you, hits his brakes abruptly. You are forced to stop. You get out. Then what happens?
Well, he goes back with he asked for my ID and information. I give it to him. He goes back. He checks it. He comes to my car, and then his true intentions became known because he then asked me if he could search the vehicle. And me not knowing anything about the law, my first thought, foolishly, and I really want people to understand how foolish this was that, well, if I don't have anything to hide, what's the problem? So
let him search it.
Let him search it. So I got out the vehicle. He told me to stay at the back of my car. He told me that if I moved, his dog would jump out the car and bite me. And this is February. I was comfortably dressed inside the vehicle. I had sweatpants and a t-shirt. The heat was on. So I stood at the back of my vehicle, and I was there for maybe 40, 45 minutes while he searched every part of that vehicle. He searched the center console, the glove compartment. He searched the trunk. He searched underneath the spare wheel that you have in the back of the trunk. And thankfully, he wasn't one of these police officers that would plant evidence, because he didn't plant any evidence. But I was freezing. I was so cold. I was tearing. My teeth were chattering. He found nothing. And he looked sort of upset. He walked back to his car. He came back to me, and he had a ticket, a citation, and he didn't give me the citation. He instead pinned it in my chest, like he pushed it in my chest, and it fell to the ground. And he went back to his car. I picked it up, and it was a citation for driving without a seatbelt.
What a horrific incident and traumatizing incident. And thank you for sharing that, because I think, especially in this day and age when we talk a lot about some of the issues that we are seeing when it comes to criminal justice and law enforcement, there are so many Americans that never have to have this type of experience. And then for another group of Americans, it's very common. And it's something that, it's thought about a lot, to where you're literally sitting in your car and you're thinking, if I'm on a, open road by myself late at night, what's going to happen? So I'm so sorry that happened to you. So you have this experience, and were you able to take legal action? And again, we have so many good law enforcement officers, but there are some bad apples. What happened? What was the next step, or what ended up as the resolution?
So it was extremely humiliating experience. If you've never had to experience being singled out or treated differently because of the color of your skin or because of your race or ethnicity, it's hard for you to be able to relate to that. But it was just angering. I was very angry. I was very frustrated. I went to the university's attorney to try to seek some assistance, but of
The
course,
school you were attending at the
right,
time. So
right,
you went to their
FAMU's,
legal office and
right,
you said, "Hey, could someone help me?"
yes,
And what did
of
they
course
say?
they
Yeah.
represent FAMU.
Right.
So then I went to the public defender's office, and
Mhm.
the public defender's office represents indigent persons who are accused of committing an offense, which I wasn't.
Right.
So I didn't know who to bring this to.
So because you hadn't been charged,
Right.
you didn't need a public defender.
Exactly.
But obviously something, was terribly wrong with what just happened. So we need to figure this out.
And I didn't know who to turn to.
Mm.
And I didn't even know at that time that I had a right to refuse the search of the vehicle. I had no clue.
Right. So many lessons there for the public, and so did that event kind of become a life changing moment for you, where you just said, okay, now I'm going to help people in these type of situations. What was the turning point for you?
Well, that's exactly what happened. When that incident happened, and then the subsequent happenings of not being able to find someone to help, I decided this was not going to happen to me or anyone else that I know again. And that changed the trajectory of my academics from then on. I decided I was going to go to law school, and that's what I did.
So no more accounting. Sounds about all right. For those who might know attorneys, we definitely come from all different walks of life. So you get into law school, you graduate. What's your first job like? What do you decide to do? Because a lot of people go to law school, don't know what they want. So how do you decide your first job?
I wanted to make money.
That
was
part.
my thought when I went to law school.
Mhm.
So I got out of law school, and I think I know it's within 2 weeks. It might have even been within a week. I started working at this construction litigation firm in Fort Lauderdale, and I was making more money than I thought I was going to make for some time. And the money was really good, but I hated the job. I was bored to tears. I couldn't stand it. The only time I ever liked that job was when we did go to court and had to argue something. So I enjoyed the litigation aspect of it, but all the other stuff, but the litigation aspect was like maybe 3% of the
Small
job.
amount at that particular firm. Wow.
Yeah, and 97% of it was researching, writing, wasting time.
Not your cup of tea.
Yeah.
So you decide to go for a change. What was that like?
So I started at that firm in 2001. So right about Christmas 2002, I decided that my New Year's resolution was going to be I wanted to be happier. So I left that firm, and in 2003, I went to legal aid.
Oh, wow.
And because this is, I think, where my passion was always in helping folks who were not able to help themselves. So I went to legal aid. They were not hiring at the time. The director of legal aid, a gentleman by the name of Tony Karat, he sent me over to the public defender's office and told me to speak to the boss there, who was at that time Al Schreiber.
Mm-hmm. So legal aid, just to kind of catch up our viewing audience, because a lot of times we as attorneys tend to think everybody knows what we're referring to. So just describe briefly what legal aid does.
So legal aid also helps indigent persons or people who are not able to afford a lawyer, but it helps folks in the civil arena. So for instance, landlord-tenant issues, social security issues, these types of things, you would get a legal aid lawyer if you did not have the money to pay for it.
So we have two different branches of the legal system in the United States. We have the civil side, where two individuals can sue one another. And then we have another side, the criminal side, which is where the state or the county is bringing a case against an individual for breaking the law. So legal aid is the civil side. Again, if you can't afford an attorney, you can try to see if legal aid can help you.
Right.
So if not legal aid, no job opening there, they send you to the public defender's office. All right. So for folks who don't know, what does the public defender's office do?
So the public defender's office will defend folks who don't have enough money to hire a private lawyer in criminal matters.
Okay.
So if you are charged with a criminal offense, the public defender's office will represent you free of charge.
So you go over there and you're like, I want to do this now, or how does that happen?
That is an interesting story. So I remember this clearly. This was a Friday afternoon. I got to the public defender's office around 12:30. I let the front desk person know that Tony Karat over at Legal Aid sent me over to speak to Al Schreiber. Now, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know Tony Karat. I didn't know Al Schreiber, except that I just met Tony. So they called me back, and I went to meet Al Schreiber. And at that time, Schreiber was, he's 6'5", big belly, Jewish guy whose personality just took up the whole building, not just the whole floor, the whole building. So he sits me down at this round table across from him, and we start to talk. And he says to me, "You have an accent." And I said, "Yes, I'm from Dominica." He's like, "Man, I went there on a cruise. You can start on Monday." So that was Friday. I started that Monday. Was that Saturday? 3 days later, I started the public defender's office. And then in 7 days from my first day at the public defender's office, I had a jury trial.
Wow. Talk about trial by fire, literally.
Yes.
So here you are, eager attorney, left the corporate life. And I think there's a lot of, life wisdom there. Money isn't everything. Money doesn't buy happiness. Okay, I'm going to go help people. So you end up trying to go to legal aid, end up at the public defender's office. And 7 days later, you're trying your first case. Oh my goodness. So tell us about your experience there. How long were you there? And what was it like serving clients that could not afford an attorney?
I absolutely loved being a public defender. There's not one job I've ever had that has been as satisfying, as fulfilling as when I was a public defender. I was trying cases left and right, up is down, inside out, backwards, forwards. I was just trying cases. Like my motto was, well, I can't really say it on camera, but we had a little motto at the public defender's office about take that to trial.
Take it to trial.
So
I
was trying cases all the time, and I loved it. I loved the experience of appearing in front of a jury and fighting on behalf of my client. You always had the mentality of you being David versus Goliath.
So it's great to know that there are such zealous advocates like yourself working at the public defender's office. I think sometimes people don't feel comfortable or feel like they're getting shortchanged if they can't afford a private attorney. But tell us a little bit more about the types of cases you handled there and what the clientele was like. As we get into our topic, talking a little bit more about diversifying the different branches. This is one side of a kind of like a tripod. So you have the public defenders, you have the state attorneys, and of course you have the judges, which are like the neutral referees in making sure that justice is carried out. So tell us a little bit more about what it was like being a public defender.
Well, the judges are supposed to be the neutral referees. We'll get to that later. But the public defender's office, the majority of our clients were Black and brown folk. And there are a lot of reasons for that. We know that police officers are quick to arrest someone who's non-Caucasian. I think the latest statistics I looked at was something like 3 times more so than their white counterparts for the same offense.
Wow.
So
over policing in certain neighborhoods,
yes,
perhaps, yeah.
And over arresting. For instance, an offense, perhaps let's say a white kid and a Black kid goes into a store and they take a candy. The white kid may get off with "don't do that again," whereas the Black kid will get charged with actual petty theft
and get a criminal record started. Right. Yeah. So there's a lot in the news about that. So you get there and you're in what kind of cases? What are you handling?
When I first started the public defender's office, I started with domestic violence cases, and there's a very interesting dynamic about domestic violence cases because by far of the cases that I've handled as a criminal defense lawyer overall, those types of cases seem to be the only kind of cases that's an equal opportunity case, meaning that you have mostly men are the ones who are arrested and charged with domestic violence offenses. but you will have white men, black men, Hispanic men,
Equally.
Asian
Yeah,
men.
everybody's
Yeah, you know,
there. Unfortunately,
yeah,
yeah, everyone's
unfortunately.
there. Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I started the public defender's office. I did. Then I moved up to felonies, and I tried. The only cases I didn't try at felonies were murder cases. I didn't get to that level yet.
So tell us about how diverse the staff and members of the public defender's office was at the time that you were there. And we're just talking about one county, Broward County here in Florida, but just to give us an idea of what it looks like in terms of who represents these clients.
It's important that you mentioned that we're talking about Broward County because Broward County happens to be one of the more diverse counties in the state of Florida. We have 67 counties here, and Broward, Dade, Orange County tend to be the more diverse counties. But shockingly, surprisingly, the public defender's office at that time did not have many black lawyers at all, despite the fact that the supermajority of clients were black and brown folks, as I mentioned. Black and brown lawyers were in the vast minority, very few of us at that office.
Okay, has that changed? Have we seen a trend towards hiring more diverse, qualified candidates who can help to, I guess, bring some kind of life experience to the position that may intersect with what their clients may have experienced?
You know, and I don't know that it's that it was a matter of hiring as much as it maybe was a matter of the lack of that pool of black or brown
wanting that
lawyers,
type of job,
right?
Ah,
Well, first of all, we have a lower pool of black and brown lawyers. First of all,
okay, across
and
the
then
board,
from that pool,
right?
how many of them are trying to be public defenders?
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about that because when we talk about lawyers and we happen to be, like you said, in a very diverse part of the state, there are not a lot of black and brown lawyers across the board. I think I was reading nationally. I wish I could quote the source where 2% of lawyers nationwide are African American women. Now, again, in Florida, that might be skewed a little bit higher because of our state demographics. However, that's still not a lot. So once we get the pipeline going, where there are more people of color, different backgrounds, women getting into law schools, graduating, taking their bars, then we will have like you're saying, a more diverse pool overall. Now, tell me a little bit about your experience with being adversarial with prosecutors. I know there's a delicate dance. All of us who enjoy Law and Order and all those other shows, is it really like that? How is it that you're able to hopefully get the best outcome for your client when you're working from the public defender's perspective?
I think I'm the wrong person to ask because my perspective as an attorney, as a criminal defense attorney, and it was formed when I was in the public defender's office. I have a story about that too. But my perspective has always been, these are not my friends. You know, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to be your buddy.
Meaning the prosecutors.
Prosecutors.
Yes, I understand.
I'm here to be professional. I put forth my. I don't think there's any prosecutor who could ever say, Jara McLawrence tried to get one over on me,
right,
or tried to deceive me about something.
Right.
That's not my personality. But I'm not your buddy. You know, I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to smile with you or laugh with you, especially not in front of my client who's shackled,
facing all these charges,
looking at all this time in prison.
Right.
So, you know, my perspective was I'm preparing every case like it's a capital murder case. I don't care if it's a possession of marijuana, if it's a petty theft, if it's a panhandling case. I'm preparing it like you're trying to take this person's life, and I'm fighting for it all the way. So I was never one of these people to go out. First of all, I don't drink alcohol, so you wouldn't find me at a bar drinking with prosecutors. But you know, I never did that.
Yeah, because you see that in the TV shows, and you think that, and a lot of the networks do know each other, of different offices, etc. But you leave eventually, and you go into private practice, and you would continue to defend folks who were charged with crimes. Tell us about that part of your career.
Well, let me just go back a bit and say that over time, of course, the defense attorneys and prosecutors get to know each other. And I think that, in my opinion, from what I've seen from prosecutors, the way that we relate to each other now, people get to understand who you are and how you carry yourself. And there tends to be a certain level of respect. So if you came into the public defender's office and this particular prosecutor saw you and you two kind of, your careers sort of tracked each other, and that person knows that you're a respectful
You
person.
see these people all the time in
Right,
court, so you're gonna get to know them,
right. So there's a
friendly or
certain level
not
of
friendly. We're
respect.
see, I understand. So whether you go hang out afterwards, no,
Right,
but definitely you see people on a day-to-day basis, and they get to know you and your style and how you present yourself. That's
right,
understood.
right.
So when you go out, you left after how long?
I left the public defender's office after 3 years.
Okay.
I opened my own practice.
Okay, and tell us about that side of your journey.
Man, I was hungry. Let me tell you. I left with enough money. They say that if your practice can survive 3 months, you should be okay. So I left with enough money for
3 months.
Yes,
Sink or swim.
right, overhead of the office and everything else I
Yes,
needed for the office,
yes.
and then for my personal life and all that.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, I took whatever walked in the door, and I was taking it at basement. What is it called? Bargain
Yeah,
basement prices.
prices.
You know, I was giving away the farm.
Don't
And,
I know that journey? So
so
everybody has this assumption that lawyers are, rich or they have all this money.
mm,
Let us tell you, especially when we're stepping out there and going into practice for ourselves, it can be like the scariest leap. So when you see sole practitioners or small firms, please know that there's a lot of sacrifice there. And we're just like any other business, right? We need clients to survive. So it's not the greed of the attorney, but it's more so like, it's a business as well, as a fight for justice. So I want to talk a little bit more about some history I know of you and getting involved into politics, because
right,
I don't think of judges as political, but oftentimes, as our viewers will know, judges run for office. And we are paying a lot more attention, I think, to who's on the ballot for judge. And I think that's important as we discuss how diverse the bench is and how we can try to make it more diverse and what impact that may or may not have on the outcomes of trials and other hearings that take place within both the criminal and the civil side of the courts of law.
mm.
So tell us a little bit about your run for judge. What was that like, and why did you decide to run for judge?
So I ran for judge twice.
Hmm.
And before I tell you why I ran for judge, I think I have to give credit where credit is due. And when in about 2003, I think I saw that there was a young black lawyer named Perry Thurston, who's one of our representatives now in the state of Florida. And he ran for judge. And before he ran for judge, I didn't know. I never paid attention to the judicial races. I never paid attention. So I didn't even know that people ran for judge.
Right.
And much less a black person
Right.
running for judge.
Right.
So so I always remember Perry, and I always remember him running, and that kind of spurred me even 7 years later.
Just seeing him, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
to say, you know what, I could do this. And when I ran for judge, I didn't run for judge. It wasn't, it's very funny because a lot of people who I met along the path when I ran for judge, they would tell me, Jar, you got to come up with a better reason than for the reason I had. And the reason I ran for judge is because of the person that I was challenging. I thought that particular person had no business being a judge. They had no business wearing a robe and representing the judiciary. I thought that person was very callous, very cruel, very heavy-handed. And a lot of people, a lot of lawyers would talk about judges like this, but they don't do anything. And really, the only thing you can do is to challenge them.
So you're saying within, the courtroom decorum and just seeing this person and how they responded to people, it wasn't satisfactory. And you're saying, I want to change it. I'm going to go ahead and challenge that person.
Right, exactly.
So what was it like? Did you have to raise money? I know there's a lot of rules. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty, but I think it's important that we talk about some of those obstacles, because it really does shine a light on why we don't see a lot of women, a lot of persons of color take the bench. And it can be very difficult. You can become appointed depending on your jurisdiction, and obviously you have to run depending on your jurisdiction. So what was it like for you?
This is another part of my career that I absolutely loved. I loved running. I loved going from city to city within the county and meeting the different people who I met. To this day, I still call up some of those folks and I just check on them. We talk for half an hour, we shoot the breeze, because I remember these people.
Yeah.
And they remember me, and I like that.
So you
like
enjoyed the
interaction.
experience
Yes.
of getting to know the community, which is very important, because I think sometimes if you are not active in the community, you don't necessarily have the broadest perspective when it comes to dealing with folks, as opposed to a person who is of and from the community. So, what would you say about running? Would you encourage others? And what do you think, I guess, the trend will be in terms of having a more diversified judiciary? Do you think that's coming?
Well, let me answer one of your other questions
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
first. So, one of the things that we have to take into consideration when a lawyer runs for judge is that they have to raise a massive amount of money, especially in a county as large as Broward County. So, a judicial candidate cannot ask you to donate, like as you how you see these other candidates appear
Right.
and on
Right.
Facebook and whatever other types of ads that they have, and they say donate. A judicial candidate cannot do that. They can hold fundraisers, but even at the fundraisers, they cannot ask for your money. You just have to make the donation. So that
Wow.
kind of hampers them to an extent. Um,
So there's a lot of rules because judges have to at least appear
Very
to
impartial.
be to be impartial. So
Mm,
they can't say, "Give me some money, thank you, I appreciate you, I'll remember you later."
mm.
No, it doesn't work like that. They have to stay completely neutral. So imagine having to raise money and not being able to
Ask
ask
for
for
money,
it.
right?
So how's that work? Okay, that's another show.
Mm.
But so you get this kind of like hand tying, but you still have to raise money because it takes money to win these
Right.
races. Wow. So do
It's
you think that keeps a lot of people out of
e-
the races?
certainly. I mean, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about Broward County. I think something like a million or 1.2 million registered voters. So imagine if you have to get a piece of mail out to each one of those
How
registered
much it
voters, how much it's
costs?
going to
Yeah,
cost you.
yeah, yeah.
So you kind of have to target if you're a person that you don't have $1 million, you don't have five hundred
Yeah,
thousand
just sitting
dollars,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So you have to kind of budget, and you have to think about, okay, I'm going to send to these targeted areas, and the
Mhm.
rest of the areas I'm gonna
Try
hoof
to
it.
go to and
Right.
knock on those
Right.
doors. Very interesting.
So
So, do you think that since you've run, how has the numbers reflected more of the community at large? Do you think we have seen enough of a change when it's come to diversifying the bench?
enough of a change? No, we have seen a change. We have started to see more black attorneys running. George Odom just ran, and he was successful in his race. So
Yes.
thankful and
Stephanie
happy
Moon
for
and a couple
George.
other, and we're talking about races here in South Florida, but there also are around the state several individuals of color who have also been successful at their races. So, do you think when we are talking about judicial races now, the public is much more aware? I think there was a time, and I'm making an assumption that many just checked the box or bubbled in the first name.
Mm.
Do you think there has an awareness has grown around paying attention to who's running for judge, and why should people pay attention?
I think that there is an awareness. I think that the pastors here in Broward County have done a great job, a fantastic job in informing their congregants of the judicial races, of the prosecutor races, of the public defender races. So they're doing a great job. We need to do more. For our population, I think from the when I remember looking at it, um, black folk make up about 30% of Broward County,
Mm-hmm.
and which means that if we have 90 judges, we should have about 27 black judges.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if we just did the
Yeah,
percentages,
yeah.
strict percentages,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we have something like maybe 11, possibly 12 persons who are either magistrates or judges in
Right,
Broward County. So we
right.
still have a way to go.
Yeah, definitely some development there. Finally, I'd like to talk about the other side that we spoke about in terms of prosecutors.
Mm.
We know that there also is a lot of control within who is charged and what they are charged for from the prosecutors or state attorney's office. Tell me about your experience having watched that in action. Or is there room for more education, more awareness of what should I say, life experience when it comes to criminal defendants? Do you see prosecutors looking at, and I've asked you a lot there just now, but the totality of the circumstances, or is there still kind of like a very rigid approach in terms of how cases are handled, particularly when it comes to young people and particularly when it comes to people of color?
Well, in Broward County, finally, we've had a change in the prosecutor's office. We had the same prosecutor in Broward County from 1976 until what is this,
Yeah, just last
2020?
year,
Yeah.
yes.
So finally, we have Harold Pryor is the new prosecutor in Broward County, a black male of
Mm-hmm.
Jamaican descent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's already started to make changes, and I hope that that continues. For folks who don't know, people who don't know, the prosecutors, I've always said this, and maybe it rumples some feathers, but really and truly in the criminal justice system, the prosecutors have, if not all the power, like maybe 95% of the power.
Yeah.
Um, like a lot of people think if a police officer arrests you and charges you with an offense, that's what you're going to be prosecuted for. But that's not the way it works. The prosecutors review whatever it is that the police officer sends them, and the prosecutors make the decision as to what you'll be prosecuted for. So, for example, I've had a client who was arrested with delivery of cocaine, and it was delivery of cocaine because of the way that the cocaine was quote unquote packaged. But because of who the prosecutor was on the case, the prosecutor looked at more than just the
The police's
the police
initial,
reports.
yeah.
They looked at the person. They saw that this person was a college student. They saw this person didn't have any parents, was struggling, had a job, and was doing their best to try to make it, and so on and so forth. And then was able to talk to that, with my permission, talk to that person. And instead of charging them with delivery of cocaine, which is a second-degree felony, where they're looking at 15 years in prison and $10,000 in fines, charge them with a third-degree possession of cocaine and offer them a diversion program.
Wonderful.
So that person wouldn't have that on their record. They wouldn't have that
First-time offender,
First-time
in
offender,
college,
exactly.
those type of things. So that's a wonderful story. And I think the public might be a little bit shocked to realize how much latitude and leeway state attorneys, also known as prosecutors, have when it comes to what to charge people with and whether to charge people with an offense. So it's a very interesting system. And again, our show today was hopefully going to give you some idea of what occurs between all those involved in this dance, whether it's the prosecutor's side, the public defender's side, of course, the judge's side. But we hope to see more diversity when it comes to all of these branches, if you will, of the criminal justice system. Do you want to leave us with any final words and hopeful trends or trends to look for in the future?
I really do hope, as we mentioned here today, that we will have more Black lawyers. First of all, we need Black lawyers so that we can occupy these positions. So more students at the college level who apply for law school,
encouraging them to get to law school. Absolutely.
Right. And then once they get out of law school, to look at these public institutions. Before, I mean, it's fine if you're going to go in the corporate world and whatever you're going to do. But there's a lot of value in going to the public defender's office, going to the public prosecutor's office, as I call it,
yeah.
or and then eventually ascending to the bench. So I would definitely encourage young folks who are looking at what's my career going to be, to look at a career in law.
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you guys at home have enjoyed too. Please do like, please comment, please share. We want to thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Justice. I'm your host, Suzette Speaks. I've enjoyed this. I hope you have too. We'll see you next time.